I'm really honored today to have American Farm Bureau President Bob Stallman with us. He's a rice and cattle producer from Columbus, Texas. In addition to serving as president of the American Farm Bureau, the nation's largest and most influential general farm organization, he's the 11th president in the organization's history, first elected in January of 2000. Prior to being elected to president of AFBF, Bob was president of Texas Farm Bureau. In 2010, Stallman was elected chairman of the newly formed U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance, an effort specifically targeted at increasing consumers' trust in modern food production. He's a 74 honors graduate of the University of Texas. It's long enough ago, we can forgive him. And is married to Stacy Bryan, has 2 daughters and 8 grandchildren. I really enjoyed working this past year. American Farm Bureau, due to the urging of some folks here in Missouri and our policy process, amongst others, has been working very hard on a big data. We announced the principles with Mary Kay Thatcher's help, but we've been led in that by Bob Stallman, and it has been extraordinarily gratifying, and it just makes me extraordinarily proud as we worked in that committee with both industry and farm groups from all over the United States, all different kinds of commodity groups. I don't think there's another person in the country who could have come to the conclusion who could have led that group, that disparate group, to the happy conclusion that we reached without Bob Stallman. The respect he has across agriculture and across the United States is unequaled. We're extraordinarily proud to have him as our president, and please help me welcome President Bob Stallman.
Good morning, y'all. It is fantastic to be here at the Lake of the Ozarks with you celebrating your 100th anniversary today. Blake asked me to put this on the calendar a long time ago, and I said absolutely, and it has stuck. Blake, I normally don't criticize a state president, but you missed a little part of my introduction, and it's not your fault, we didn't tell you, but I've got number 9 grandchild as of 2 weeks ago, so. Well, I went to Broome County, New York in 2011. That was the first county farm bureau to help them celebrate their 100th anniversary. And so it is very fitting, I think, for me to be here at Missouri Farm Bureau while you celebrate your 100th anniversary as the first state farm bureau. And Diane Olson was chiding me a little bit this morning, wanted me to be sure that I fully understood that Missouri Farm Bureau had a conversation about how we needed a national organization and thus is responsible for creating the American Farm Bureau Federation. Well, in 1914, the United States entered the First World War, and American food production was vital to keeping people in those allied nations from starving at the time. Now, a century later, most people only have a textbook familiarity with the idea of food rationing. But America's farmers and ranchers are as important as ever to our nation's security, notwithstanding whatever Mark Bittman may say at a New York Times Food for Tomorrow event. And Farm Bureau remains vital to the interest of those farmers and ranchers. As you take time to reflect back over these past 100 years, I hope you'll take great pride in our agricultural heritage and how closely agricultural prosperity is linked with our economic and our national strength. Missouri was the first state to form a Farm Bureau, but you are still leading today. I appreciate everything that Missouri Farm Bureau does to make our whole organization stronger and more successful. You've cultivated great relationships with your members of Congress. We especially appreciate the great relationship you have with Congressman Sam Graves, who's chairman of the Small Business Committee, House Small Business Committee, and he's been a champion for reining in regulatory overreach, and he will be very instrumental to our efforts in the new Congress. Missouri has had not 1, not 2, but 3 recipients of the American Farm Bureau's highest award, the Distinguished Service Award: Senator Kit Bond, Charlie Cruz, and Dr. Abner Womack. You've had 27 straight years of membership growth. Missouri Farm Bureau has received all 6 AFBF Awards of Excellence for programs this past year. You led statewide efforts, which you already know about, to pass Constitutional Amendment 1, and that was a major win in the context of what state farm bureaus are dealing with all over this country in that arena. So congratulations on winning that recount. And last night, I told Blake, the banquet last night was the largest State Farm Bureau meal event, and believe me, we have a lot of meal events in Farm Bureau. That is the largest State Farm Bureau meal event I have ever been to. It was a fantastic evening, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to get there. My only question to you is, what is your secret? Y'all do such an outstanding job. I just want to clone you and send you out to the other states to maybe help some of them a little bit. So I am proud of the strength of Missouri Farm Bureau, your excellent leadership, and everything you are doing as a state and all the work that you do on national issues. So thank you. I believe, well, no, that's not true. I know Farm Bureau has been more successful than dealing with issues on behalf of agriculture than any other group. Now, I have some colleagues that would debate that with me on those other groups, but I think I'm right. I know I'm right. But it's because of one reason. It's because of you here in this room and all the other grassroots members across this country. To continue to be successful, our grassroots members must be involved, informed, and engaged. The basic principle upon which Farm Bureau was found was that by coming together in a unified manner and advocating on behalf of agriculture, we could accomplish more than obviously any single farmer could on their own. Our success over the past year has shown what we can accomplish when members work together in a united fashion. Despite the unprecedented division that we see and know about in Washington, D.C., the cultural divide, if you will, in this country between amongst the American people, Farm Bureau members over the past year have achieved wins on not one, but two major pieces of legislation. And if you kept track, there wasn't a lot of major legislating coming out of Washington, D.C. over this past Congress. Got a 5-year farm bill. It was a tough job, but we got a 5-year farm bill. And the Water Resources Development Act to authorize those much-needed investments to our waterways infrastructure. They're so important to get our products out and also to get some of our inputs in. We'll be looking to Congress for more wins next year, especially on things like agricultural labor reform and reining in the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers. I'm not going to get down in the weeds on policy issues or a long list of that this morning, but I have to talk about waters of the U.S. just a little bit. I'd hesitate to ask because I don't want to embarrass anyone about, is there anybody in this room that does not know about this issue? I didn't think so. Farm Bureau members have come together like never before to fight the waters of the U.S. proposed rule. I think our unity, our tenacity, frankly, our just plain cussed stubbornness has surprised a lot of people. I know it has surprised our friends over at the EPA. Now, I'm not surprised that we've been able to do this, but I am impressed. I was flying over to the Kentucky Farm Bureau meeting with our Executive Vice President Juliana Potts last week, and we got this conversation about, well, what accomplishment, that I think was really like a big accomplishment during the course of the time I've been president. And I'll be honest with you, and it's not just because it's here and now, but the work that Farm Bureau has done on waters of the U.S., the engagement that we had from the very beginning, the resources we put to bear, the unity that we had and engagement from all across the country, and the fact that EPA did everything but call us out by name. In fact, they're not supposed to advocate for rules, but I think it's been clear that they've been inappropriately doing so. So this whole effort that we've done has been one of the best coordinated campaign strategies across Farm Bureau, across this country, that I've ever seen, and the effects are evident. Now, folks, we haven't won this yet. Let me just be clear about that. I think we have EPA on the run, but we have not won this yet. We have to keep the pressure on, and I know all of you will do that. Those who underestimate agriculture's relevance and influence, I think would do well to remember how we have behaved and what we've been able to accomplish with respect to this effort. Thank you for all of your comments to the docket. Blake already mentioned that. As of Monday of this week, there were almost 700,000 cleared comments in the docket. Now, most of these are form comments. You know, you punch it, you send in a postcard, you punch a button, all say the same thing. Now, frankly, they count comments differently. If they're the mass email comments, they kind of put over here and said, okay, yeah. But where they have unique comments, those are comments that actually say something particularly relevant about the rule. There were 17,000 of those, and a little over 10% of them came from Farm Bureau. We know this because they have to post these rules, post these comments in the docket. Now, folks, let me tell you, going up against the organized environmental community that can generate these things just over and over and over again, 10% may not sound like much on some days, but in this effort, it was a huge deal for us to have over 10% of the unique comments. EPA cannot sit back and say, well, we haven't heard from anybody else but the environmentalists. They can't say that this time. They may wish they could, but they can't. So I appreciate all the work and effort that it took to get those unique comments in there. In fact, we have some reason to believe that there are slow-walking comments from our side, just to make it look like, you know, the tide is in their favor. So we have just two words for EPA and the Corps. That's enough. We were in the office last week, and you know, we run these campaigns in a very professional manner. They're very detailed, and so we were actually doing sort of a post-ops analysis of some of the social media stuff that we did. And when you looked at the charts and the statistics and do all the analytics, it was clear how large a role the That's Enough video played in the success of the campaign and all the media coverage that came with it. It kept engagement levels up, and it kept the issue front and center. And we also appreciate all those actions on social media. Now, I admittedly am at an age where I still don't understand social media and why people do it. But I do understand how important it is in this day and age to communicate. And Chris Chin's over here just grinning at me because she knows this. But we're learning to use the tools. We're learning to use the tools just effectively, or if not more so than our opponents out there, and we have to do that. We're doing that now with a grassroots action team, and those members really led the way. That's what we're calling our GO team. It's grassroots Farm Bureau members who have been through AFBF's leadership development training. So they've learned how to relate to the media, they learned how to communicate, they've learned how to use social media. Most of them already knew it anyway. And they're definitely putting those skills to work on our behalf. So I call them our strike force. And Chris Chin is one of those. The stars of That's Enough, Andy and Casey Clay, are another couple. And I want to certainly thank them for stepping up to be soldiers on behalf of agriculture in this GO team effort. And we hope to expand that effort. We hope to expand it. And I don't think anyone's mentioned yet the webcam that y'all had with the mythical creatures of the ditch. I asked Blake, I said, you know, how do you come up with stuff like this? It's incredible. He says, well, I just supplied the beer. We have a lot of creative people on staff that came up with that. And man, if that works, let's do more of it, folks, I'm telling you. Well, as I said, we haven't won on Waters of the U.S. yet, but we've pivoted 100% now because we will have a Republican Congress, and having a House and Senate under the control of the Republicans gives us a much greater chance to put some blocking legislation in that will defund that effort. Once again, though, we can defund this effort, but this issue and this battle is not going to go away. We're going to be fighting on the front lines from now till however long we're around to be sure that we try to protect agriculture from overzealous regulators in a society that thinks that somehow we're irrelevant and aren't doing a good job. On environmental issues, we really don't get the credit that we deserve as farmers and ranchers because the other side spins us in a negative manner. Now, I spent years, and I wished I had $1, for every time somebody came up to me and said, we just need to do a better job of telling our story. Okay. Usually that was in the context of a national advertising campaign. We created U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance because we weren't moving the needle doing that in terms of consumer opinion. We created U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance to really pool resources and figure out how we needed to engage with consumers, agriculture needed to engage with consumers to move that needle. And it has been an incredible effort. First, it was an incredible effort to get 21 agricultural groups to agree to do anything together. But once we got past that, we did a lot of very sophisticated research, opinion polls, consumer research, focus groups. And what we learned has caused me personally, and I hope a lot of our Farm Bureau leadership, to change the way we talk about agriculture. Consumers don't want to be told what it is they're supposed to think. Most of us don't like to be told what to think when you think about it. What they want is to be able to connect with a farmer or a rancher. They want to have a conversation. They want to have their questions answered. They want to have trust in somebody. They want to build a relationship. Now, on a one-to-one basis without technology, that would be almost impossible, but the social media platforms allows us to do that. And I am so impressed with the engagement that those who have been through our so-called EASE training have moved forward and really engaged with consumers. And it's making a difference. You can look at it on Facebook when an issue comes up. You know, you'll get a critic that'll say something, oh, this is terrible, agriculture is bad, but then all of a sudden there's a couple other, usually younger farmers and ranchers saying, well, wait a second now, you know, let me tell you about my operation. And that makes a huge difference. And so, talking about us being environmental stewards of our land, about taking care of our animals, about making the place we live on and our farm better for the next generation, and about always looking for ways for improvement, those are the messages that carry weight. And those are the ones that we need to keep delivering. So I encourage all of you, when you have the opportunity, to engage in that fashion to do so. Blake already talked a little bit about the big data issue. This is different. This is sort of like a private sector business issue. It's not legislative, it's not regulatory. But we had a session at our annual meeting last year where our delegates came together and said, whoa, wait a second. This new technology, all of the telematics, all of the instantaneous transmission of data from our very expensive and fancy equipment we have now, holds great promise for us becoming more productive and efficient, but I've got just a little bit of problem because there's a lot of my information that is very, I think, closely held and private that's going into this system. Well, our delegates said we need to have some principles, so our delegates laid out some principles. And since it was a new effort, new technology, it was clear that industry and, frankly, farmers and ranchers didn't really understand how all of this was supposed to work with respect to things like ownership, control, access of the data. And so we thought it was important as an organization to sit down with those industry partners, the big guys, if you will, and bring in the agricultural groups. And instead of, starting to fight with each other, and God forbid, get Congress involved, that maybe we could work this out. And so we sat down over the course of several months, a couple of big meetings, a lot of work behind the scenes with staff, our staff, Mary Kay Thatcher and some of her colleagues were heavily involved in that, to sit down with them and figure out what those principles should be. And in November, we announced an agreement between those companies and basically the ag groups that basically, specifies the principles. Everyone agrees farmers own their data and should have control of it. Purposes for which it should be used or not used, and a whole list of things. I won't go through the whole list of principles, but I think it was very important because we all did come to agree. Now the question is, and we will be having an evaluation tool for the future for farmers to look at, is to see how well the companies abide by these principles. And I suspect they will, because peer pressure and market pressure are going to make them do it. So it was a worthwhile effort, something totally new, if you will, from things we've been involved with in the past, and I certainly appreciate Blake's engagement in this. He's been engaged in this from the very beginning. Brian Marshall has been another voice in talking about this issue that's been very important. I'm looking for great things. I think this new technology will, be almost equivalent to the mechanization of agriculture and what it can do for us for the future. So with that, I appreciate all the work that's been done, and we're going to continue to work with these companies and these groups to be sure that things unfold like we hope they do. Well, looking ahead, we're developing our strategies for next year. We do have that new Congress, as I've talked about. Our delegates in San Diego will give us direction in January, and then we'll build on that and take every opportunity to move Farm Bureau forward. Another area that is actually half of our mission is improving the quality of rural life. How many of you have heard about our Rural Entrepreneurship Initiative, just out of curiosity? A few of you? Well, we announced that initiative last January. We're partnering with Georgetown University's McDonough School of Business, now that's a new relationship, and the White House Rural Council. And what this boils down to is, to improve the quality of rural life, we need business and economic activity. Granted, farmers and ranchers provide some of it, but there's a lot of other opportunity for business creation in rural America. And so we've had a national summit, a conference. We put on educational webinars for entrepreneurs. But what I want to talk about is our Rural Entrepreneurship Challenge. How many of you have ever seen Shark Tank? A few of you? Actually, a lot of you. Well, for Farm Bureau, and this has been a contest that's been ongoing in the fall, but we're down to the finalists. 4 Farm Bureau member entrepreneurs will showcase their businesses and new ideas at the annual convention in San Diego in January. And they will compete for cash prizes. And I'm happy to say that one of those finalists, Suzanne Ellerbrock of Golden Bridges, Inc. in Palmyra, is from the great state of Missouri. Now, imagine Shark Tank. We can't call it that. There's a few copyright issues involved. But the concept is similar. A panel of business experts will judge these at our annual meeting in San Diego and give the finalists advice and, of course, select a winner. And the audience will get to vote on a People's Choice Award. So we're looking at kind of having an exciting time in San Diego with respect to this one effort. I think it's going to be great fun. I'm really excited about our rural development work. I think maybe we haven't focused enough on rural quality of life issues, rural development stuff as an organization, but that is changing as we've seen the need. There's another area that we've been working in rural American agriculture that I think is, frankly, it's just wonderful. It's important, but it's wonderful. We're working to put our returning veterans in the front lines of farming and food production. We're working closely with the Farmers Veteran Coalition, and I'm so proud of Charlie Cruz's leadership. I asked him to represent us on that organization, and he's vice president of the Farmer Veteran Coalition Board of Directors. He was the opening speaker for the recent National Farmer Veterans Stakeholders Conference that AFBF sponsored together with Missouri and some other state farm bureaus. We're also working with the coalition to develop a mentorship network to pair returning veterans with Farm Bureau members. That network has caught the attention of many Farm Bureau leaders who are veterans themselves in a lot of instances and who are interested in providing mentorship to young veterans who want to become farmers. But some may not even have any background in agriculture. Our veterans still have much to offer this country, folks, by producing our nation's food, fiber, and fuel. And we want to help them do that if they have that desire. Of course, one of the biggest reasons for our success as an organization is our volunteer leaders. Now, I always say that a great grassroots elects great volunteer leaders. And so the reason we have those volunteer leaders and the quality thereof is because of you, the grassroots. And thanks to you, Blake, for all the hours and miles you devote to Farm Bureau. I'll have to admit that our experience at the New York Times Food for Tomorrow's event was about the most surreal thing I've ever looked at. I'm glad he talked about it, but you have to be in there to understand what the mindset is of, I'll just call them the cultural elites in this country with regard to food. But it was important we were there. I value Blake's work on the board of directors. He's an outstanding voice. He represents Missouri agriculture, Missouri Farm Bureau extremely well, but also represents American agriculture. And Blake is probably the best opinion writer, blogger, speaker on agricultural issues that I have ever seen, folks. You should be proud of him. And thanks to all of you for taking time away from your families and your operations to be engaged in Farm Bureau. Thank you for all you have done and thank you for all you will do. I hope you will continue to be engaged for even more success on behalf of agriculture. And I wish you many more moments that matter and a happy holiday season. Thank you for having me this morning.